New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Oh, look, it's still the slide up on top of our faces. My goodness. Good afternoon to everybody who's joining us on New Thought Media Network. I am Bill over here in outdoors in Philadelphia or nearby, and there's Carol indoors near the beach. And there is every possibility that there will be noises in my outdoor background. Can you hear the guy with the weed whacker
I can't really.
when I'm talking? You can't really? Okay. I'm sure it'll turn up later. The reason that I'm outdoors is because I'm sharing my office now with a bat who flew into the house overnight. Can't make this crap up.
You
So
can't.
you can't. So the bat is using the house during the day. Maybe it might be gone already. We opened up a window and somebody came in and checked for it, and there was no bat evidence. So, and I figured that the
Mm,
noise that would be going on today would be the road crew that's repaving my entire neighborhood, but
Mm-hmm.
weed whacker next door instead. So, there's there's a metaphysical lesson in everything. I
Okay.
have no idea what the hell it is, but there always is. There's always something metaphysical going on. So here's me sitting outdoors, and I'll move inside before we start recording the podcast episode if that becomes necessary. So we'll just have to see. And just as a reestablish for all the folks who are joining us on New Thought Media Network, either live right now at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Monday afternoon, or on the recordings. This is the recording session for the Practical Prayer podcast, and what we're going to do is we're going to chat for a little while, welcome questions, comments, prayer requests, and so forth from the folks who are either here now or the folks who are going to come by a little later on. In which case, what you want to do is go to bethelight.com, be-the-light.com, and somebody seems to have moved around all of our stuff, so I don't know where that one, the little banner that sometimes goes down there went. But apparently none of my business. We'll worry about it some other time. Anyway, go to bethelight.com and find the Practical Prayer podcast section. There's a make a comment, ask a question button, and you can do that there. And we will do the same thing to either address your questions, fill your prayer request, or just bring the whole topic into conversation here on the podcast. So there's no promise that we're going to be helpful, but we will at least pay attention.
You're you're having a day, aren't you? And it's
You know?
not even like this is just the middle of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's all sorts of stuff going on. There's a lot of activity going on in my neighborhood. I feel like the guys doing play-by-play at the Olympics, where they have to
Mm-hmm.
put on the soundproof headphones so they can hear over the roar of the crowd, and they're trying to have a reasonable conversation with the person who's sitting right next to them, who they couldn't hear at all if it weren't for all of the technology.
Well, listen. If I'm hearing what the audience is hearing, I don't hear all that. You hear that, I don't hear it. Can you hear Steve?
No, no, I
He's
couldn't
right
hear
there.
Steve over the racket. Steve, by the way, is the guy who does outdoor gardening and so forth, landscaping at Carol's house. So it's the magic of
Yeah.
working from home.
Is that what it is? Magic? You
Working
can't make
working
this
from
stuff
home
up, I'm
maintenance.
telling you. Yeah.
No, no. You know, Back in the good old days and in the radio days, we would build soundproof studios, and you walk through the door into the sound block, and then you walk through another door into the room inside of the room. And it doesn't matter what's going on outside. It's nice and quiet in there, very controlled environment. Those days are gone.
Well, okay, let me tell you what I did real quick. I
Okay.
created a room inside my office. I'm trying to soundproof the thing. I said, the heck with this. I created a soundproof booth in my walk-in closet, and that's it. And I'm so over the moon excited. Number one, because I did it. Number two, I tested it out and it works like a charm. And I remember you said, you're not going to be able to stay in there for hours.
It's going to
I
get warm.
decide that, listen, doesn't matter. It's working. And I have now two workstations. The one that in that office for just recording, that's it. And then everything else comes on this other area, big
Gotcha.
room area. So this has been such a journey, such a stressful journey. But once I decided I'm tired of this crap, I'm sick of it. I'm not waiting for anything to work out. I'm sick of buying stuff. And, you know, I didn't use the word stuff, but I
I
used a
know what you
different
mean.
word.
I know what you mean.
And it was just time to stop. I said, this is it. I'm fixing this. And it's so adorable. Oh, my goodness. When I get finished, I'm going to send you pictures. So I had to have someplace cute to work. You know that.
Yeah, of course it's gonna. It's not just gonna be functional. It's gonna be cute.
It's just cute, you know.
So
Plain
the episode
cute
today
life.
is going to be about evolution, and you have a few
Yes.
ideas about evolution, which I intentionally did not have you explain to me before. So you get to explain those to me when we get into the podcast episode. I am going to magically move myself into a different room while we play the intro, just because otherwise I'm tempting fate. And
Oh,
there's
I'm
just
sorry for laughing.
too
I'm
much
sorry.
distracting me going on around here. And I'm going to ask you to point your microphone a little more at your face. And see, the folks who are listening and watching on New Thought Media Network, this is the stuff that you don't see in the podcast. This is the pre-show. The technical thing is like, make sure that the headphones are over your ears. And, Lord knows if we had lights, there'd be a whole bunch of lighting checks that we get to do as well. Maybe we do them before we got on. Who knows? All right, let us
Who knows?
start the podcast and continue with the Practical Prayer podcast episode, I believe number 163. I'm not sure because my paperwork is upstairs in the room with the bat.
With the bat.
So yeah.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony, and
gonna
I
talk
can't wait
about
to get
evolution.
into this. Yeah.
Yeah. Evolution.
So here's what I'm so anxious. You want to say something? I'm so anxious to
No.
jump right in because this thing has been on my mind.
On your
you
mark,
know,
get
it's
set.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not the evolution of humankind. You know that, like Darwin and all that stuff. I'm not
Because you
talking
knew
about
darn
that.
well I would start talking about creation stories as soon as you brought that up. So that's what I do.
Okay, well, it ain't that. it's what
Okay.
it's what we're going through. And let me say this. This is what kicked it off in my head. I had a conversation recently with a bishop, highly respected, highly successful in the traditional church.
Hmm.
So, we talk every now and then about stuff. And let me see how to say this. They were explaining to me their forward motion in terms of vision and so
Okay.
forth.
How their particular denomination is going to move ahead to turn into something new?
Yeah. Well, in their smaller particular pastoral space, and it's a significant size church, really
Yeah.
significant. And I'm thinking, as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, I ain't God, but I'm not sure this is going to work. Really, and I'm very cautious about that because I'm not God. But anyway, um, here's what made me think, and I'm going to use the pandemic as a kickoff point.
Okay.
Everything changes, and if you're a baby boomer, the baby boomer culture seemed to last a really, really long time. But nevertheless, culture changes over time. I don't know if it's a particular event that changes it or whatever, but I feel like the pandemic was a really point of change in so many ways, particularly in the traditional church. And I'm yet to understand or get a full scope of New Thought churches or New Thought spiritual centers. So I can't say anything about that, but I do know the traditional church really well. And
Hmm.
I understand. I could see the pattern of changes that were affected by the or were an effect of the pandemic.
Yep.
So when someone shares with me a dream or a vision, a lot of people do, it's it kind of I kind of think of it in terms of juxtaposed to the change that was brought about by the pandemic. And I started to think about evolution and cultural evolution. And then
Okay.
I thought, this is a little different. This might be like consciousness evolution. And I
Okay.
thought about Barbara Marx Hubbard, who talks a bit about collective consciousness and
Yep.
how it changes the culture and all of that. And I'm thinking, like, how can we not consider that in where we are right now? Like, we're what, 4 years past the pandemic? Not
Well,
totally 4 years out of it,
right.
but four
4.5 years
years
since it started.
since it started. Yeah, so we're definitely feeling still that turning point. That how I see it in some ways a turning point, and I'm wondering if that was a if I could put the label of a consciousness evolution. There were a lot of
Yeah.
changes, but
We
cultural
were
changes, yes,
we
and
were forced
consciousness
we
changes.
were forced to a change in consciousness. It changed a lot of assumptions. It
Hmm.
changed a lot of behaviors. It kicked the legs out from under a lot of stuff that we just assumed was, baked in. And we either got to or had to reinvent a lot of stuff based on the
Hmm.
fact that those previous assumptions were no longer necessarily the case. So yeah, I'm completely with you. There's a lot of talk recently about the global supply chain because people used to think, oh, it doesn't matter where your factory is. There's, global manufacturing and there's global shipping and there's global trade and you just, you source your thing from wherever you're going to source it and it shows up on time,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then that stopped working.
Yeah.
And then, some of the partners aren't playing by the same rules that they used to because, the countries that have a lot of manufacturing capability for a certain thing want to do it a particular way. So now there's rethinking in that. And there was an evolution in thinking and in practice that got us into the global supply chain. And there's a further evolution and shift in thinking that's moving us to the post-global supply chain is sort of reset. And I'm not going to say that one of them was wrong and one of them was right. It's just one of them was right then, and the other one, something else is right now, and that's what evolution is. It's going with what's right now rather than insisting that what used to be got to stay because I liked it.
Yeah, and I didn't think about, you explained it in a different context and a little more detail than I would have if I thought over that side in that way. But it's not about right, it's about what is,
Yeah,
because there's so many times that the culture has changed in so many ways. And the pandemic, I keep using that as a point
it was a huge
for us
shift.
to, yeah, it changed so very much.
Yep.
And I've read, I mean, history tells us about changes, but this one I just happened to experience. And right here, thinking no matter how much something makes sense, it's not going to be ever like it was.
Right.
And I don't think you can make it be like it was. I think if we are, if I feel privileged to be on the planet still. And because of that, I'm very intentional about looking at things because I feel privileged to see the change. And how do we navigate through it with the least amount of trauma, emotional trauma, and other types? And I think we need, it's worth taking our time to, you use the word, there was a word you used that I noted here, reinvent. Or reassess, but I think it's like reinventing because the world is different.
Yeah.
I mean, on a very personal level, there were things that I had in hot motion before the pandemic, and bang. Okay, so I did a quick reset now. That's not all that hard for me because I'm about reset, reinvent, and
Oh yeah.
recover,
Well, there
and
was a lot of
anyway.
plans. A lot of plans got changed. I, was working in technology right through the end of 2019, and then put my full-time attention into ministry. And I had a bunch of really good ideas. I went to the Bridal Expo in January of 2020, and I started meeting all the venues and vendors, and getting myself out there as a wedding celebrant, and have this notion of doing spiritual adventures, which is physical experiential activities that have a metaphysical message, which is what I did with teen groups for a long time, because you can get a really profound spiritual experience, for example, by walking on a balance beam and having people around you perform some nonsense that really lets you embody the spiritual teaching. So I had myself set up. We had 3 sessions scheduled for a yoga studio. We were going to go in and get the group together and do spiritual adventures. And the first one was in May of 2020. And of course, had to cancel that one because the yoga studio was closed. And by the time we got to the second one, the yoga studio had been sold. They moved out of the space.
Uh,
They went all online. And when they came back, it's like, yeah, we want to do yoga together. We're really not interested in doing these ancillary things. So it's going to take a while to build back up to that because there's still the celebration of, oh, we're able to do things that we used to take for granted, in a new context. And I get it. So there was a certain amount of reinvention that happened for me as well. Turns out, fortunately, I'm really good with technology, and other ministers are not. So I've been able to do a lot of work with other ministries, helping them with the technology.
and I think that's a point that's really worth looking at, because when we get to these changes, these points of change, forces us to use maybe skills that we take for granted or didn't use or didn't see that it was important. Now, that skill that you talked about, hugely important in the traditional church.
Hmm.
It may not take off the way it, in my opinion, ought to.
Well,
But
I would love to.
one thing I know is that it ain't going back the way it was.
True.
So get on board and let's understand where it is and how to navigate where it is
Yep, that's
in our
that's
forward
evolution.
version.
That is the evolution of our lives. So I'm really interested in this. You don't have to share anybody's secret. What's the sort of thing that the bishop wants to do where you're going, I don't know.
Uh, to there a huge They already have a huge facility, beautiful.
Hmm.
But there's another one that's about 4 times as large. Now, listen. If, okay, listen. If I'm not a mathematician, but I can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Do some percentages, and you ain't gonna steal my money. I'm pretty
Okay,
good with that much.
there you
Okay,
go. You understand
if
the
you
bottom line.
if if the congregational attendance has declined enormously for everybody across the board, doesn't matter how, whatever, across the board, what about that suggests you should buy a space 4 times larger than the one you're in right now? I don't get it. And I'm saying, listen, I am humbly asking this question because,
Yep.
like I said, I'm not God. I don't know, and that's another subject. I know. Okay, I am God. Yeah, but I I wish I could understand that, and I think I'm wrestling with it so much because the person, I've admired their progress for so many years. I don't know if you're really being realistic about this. And there's other things going on with all of us with this change. You know, you have dreams that you had, and it doesn't even depend on the pandemic. You have dreams that you've had, and
Hmm.
time changes. Da 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 da. The dream is might be time for a new dream. I don't know. You know,
Could be.
but
Yeah. And
it,
what comes to my mind as you're describing this, and this is the sort of thing that, a lot of ministers that I work with, and myself included, are talking about is, what does growth look like? What does success look like? What is the metric that we want to use for saying this is how I'm growing? And as
mhm.
far as churches are concerned, it's always been, how big is the building, and how many people do you put into the building, and are you doing 2 services or 3 services on Sunday morning? And for the longest time, there was a direct correlation between the size of the facility, the number of people in the facility, and the amount of revenue that the organization was generating. Well, that's winds up being a whole business thing. But the fact of the matter is, it's free admission. So every one of those seats is free, and they pass the basket around, and some people put in 10% of their weekly income, and other people don't put in anything, and the rest of them are somewhere in between. Well, if you get the statisticians and they said, well, let's just get the people who are putting in 10% of their weekly income and let everybody else stay home. We can do it with a smaller group and get much nicer bagels. But that's not the point. It's not a revenue generating operation. So that's the big question that I would ask your bishop friend is, once it's successful, once the bishop has exactly the result that they're looking for, what's that look like? What is it? What's the metric? Is it more people who are spiritually fed? Is it more butts in the seats? Is it a bigger offering basket? And this is inside baseball for people who are in the spiritual business, but the same thing applies for everybody. When you are setting an intention, when any of us are setting an intention for a new experience we want to have, let go of the past assumptions. Once I have this, then that automatically means I'll have that. I was in the marketing business for a long time. People would say, I need a brochure. It's like, great, we know how to do brochures. Why do you need a brochure? Well, because the guy down the street has a brochure and he has 5 times the business that I do. Like, great. Okay. So if you could have 5 times the business without a brochure, would that be good? Oh, sure. Okay. So you came in telling me you wanted a brochure. We're not 3 minutes into the conversation and you no longer want a brochure. You want whatever the brochure, what you assumed the brochure was going to bring you.
Yes.
And as we dig into that in so many ways, as we are setting the intention for the next experience we want to have, we're using the nouns about what we're going to get, what we're going to have, what we want to have. Let me get this thing because that's going to give me the experience that I want. And the noun is implying the verb, and that's implying the feeling that we're going to have. So let's go to the feeling. What does it look like to be successful doing this? And let the rest
I,
of it get out of the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where practical prayer has been helpful to me in, because I look at it like not something you do, but something that you live. So
Hmm.
I may grab part of it, you know, to help me understand the relevance of where I am at this moment with something. So that's how I use it. You say, what is the experience that I want to have?
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, you know, even with me, because I mean, I had a plan. I had a plan,
Yeah.
and I had to re-examine it many times. What is the impact I'm really after? You know,
Yeah.
it if you're after a buck, that's easy because it's easy to figure out how to make some money. You know, you
Oh, and
can
it's
step
really
outside of what
easy to know when you succeeded because you have the money.
you have the money. But is that the impact that you're really after? And when you identify what it is that you want, and you said the feeling, or then that kind of determines what you're going to do to get to that. And if that doing is foreign to what you're accustomed to, you take a deep breath and say, "What am I supposed to do now?"
Hmm.
You know, and it brings up a whole lot of stuff. Do I have the courage to change it? I'm very fortunate. I don't have to worry about competition and people looking at me and I got to do better than that. I never cared about that ever. But I'm so free now that
Oh
I
yeah.
can ask that question that you pose a lot. What's the feeling you want to have?
Yeah.
And I can take a day or two to figure it out. I don't have to do anything until I figure it out because I answer to me.
Yeah.
Now, that's the
And
worst one to answer to, but still.
well, you can be your that can be your harshest critic. But you're also in an interesting position suddenly, 35, 40 years in that you are a wise and thoughtful metaphysician with a rather significant Christian following. And the needle that you're threading is how do you share these metaphysical ideas with people who are yearning for them, but who, if you just tell them, are going to get scared away because you're not including enough, enough of the stuff that they're used to.
Yeah, and I think that I'm big on looking at your life as a whole. You know, why did I go through 30 years of that or 35 years of that? Come on, Lawrence, why do And I said, God, what's all that about? It's not like you didn't have something else I could do to, and so then I start to look at what I gained from that and said, okay, so I use that now. All of these
Hmm.
things, I use this now, and I have a new way to interpret it. So it becomes so completely fun for me. But that doesn't mean that everything soars. You know,
No, no. There are times when I go look up scripture so that I can talk about it from a metaphysical perspective. And I got to figure that you probably don't have to because you know it well enough that you might go double check it, but you know what it says.
hmm
So somewhere in that 30, 35, or however 60 years of experience that you had,
yeah, uh-huh.
there's there's some value that's in there. There's something going on in there that wouldn't have been available otherwise. So, it's worth celebrating, noticing and celebrating that. And the fact of the matter is, I've said this before, that if I had done this podcast with somebody else who was in the same lane and had the same spiritual background that I did, we would have done a dozen episodes and run out of stuff to talk about. But because you have the perspective that you do, we're at 160 something and going strong. Speaking of which,
Wow.
let's take a break. And yeah, there's no no idea that you're going to be letting your foot off the gas anytime soon. Keep on coming up with stuff. Let's take a break and continue the conversation about assuming and evolution.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn, and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchiony's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
We were talking today about evolution and the way things change as time unfolds. And it's not evolution as in Darwin's evolution and everything that's happened since the Big Bang. It's the evolution and the changing and the shift in our thinking and in our experience. And the story that I wanted to bring up is one of my mentors is Michael Beckwith. And some number of years ago, they had been meeting in this converted warehouse space in Culver City, California, and they'd outgrown it, and it was time to move into a different space. Even though it was a very nicely appointed, large. They needed more elbow room, and he had wanted a bigger space and been going through this whole thing personally himself. And then finally, he said, "You know what? I don't have an edifice complex. I don't need a building." I want to have an experience. I want to be able to get a lot of people together. It doesn't need to be mine. It doesn't need to have my steeple on top. And since then, they've been meeting in a converted movie theater. Or actually, I think it's a real theater in Beverly Hills. And they got some small offices upstairs, but they're sharing the space. They got the oldie shows that are in there on Saturday night, and then they do their church services on Sunday morning. He doesn't need that huge space all week long. He just wants to have enough room for his folks to get in on Sunday morning. And that's the same evolution that you're talking about, is instead of thinking I need to have this, your colleague, the bishop who needs to have a 4,000 or an 8,000 or a 16,000 seat venue for some purpose, is like let go of the venue. What's the experience that I want to have? What's that tone and flavor that I want to be experiencing? And what is it that I want to be sharing? And that's the evolution. Maybe there's a way to share that, to have that same tone and flavor and experience without the mortar and the mortgage.
Absolutely. And I use the word freedom a lot because you can do so much more, and God can flow, the Spirit can flow through you so much more if you don't have the encumbrances that we put on ourselves, really. And in my experience, I've often been amazed at what has come out of the letting go of an idea or a belief, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what else am I holding on to? But
there's a quick, easy answer to what you're holding on to. Everything.
Yeah.
And that's the same. It's not you. I'm not singling you out. That's what we're all doing. We are all holding on to every assumption, every experience that we've had, that it's going to keep going the way that it's going, that it's going to keep working the way that it's been working, that we're going to keep being disadvantaged or struggling the way that we've been struggling. That's the assumption. That's not necessarily true. It's all subject to change.
But are we open? And that's the question that we would ask ourselves. Are we open to this change, or what does this change mean, or what is this change saying to me? What do I have to do with it? And I'm going, you're the one that brought up the 30 years I was in this thing, and then you said 60. And my mind went back to, oh my goodness, it was 40. Oh no, it was 40 something years back, and I had stayed late for work one night. My intent was to just get this stuff done. It was in corporate America at that time, having a wonderful time there. And a young man came up to me at the copy machine in the old days, the copy machine.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I, he just stood there and looked at me, and I'm thinking, please don't say anything. I can get this, get this done. And, you know, I'm like, I don't even care who you are really right now. And I happened to look at him, and he was crying. And I'm thinking, what? I gotta have this ready by 7:30 in the morning, you know.
And there's
And
somebody
he
crying
said,
at the copy machine.
yeah. And he said, I want to talk to you. I said, okay, you know, what's wrong? And he said, you know God.
Yeah, we're
I'm
buddies.
like, who told you that? But anyway, he said, you know God. And fast forward, his lifestyle was a little bit different, and he wanted to know if God hated him. And I'm thinking, I don't think so, but you know, like right now, really? And I stopped because I saw his eyes. I saw the tears in his eyes. And that to me was a moment of change. Like the pendulum had stopped because I had one thought. And I don't know that I examined my own thoughts about it, but I had to, because this was a moment. Somebody was really hurt, and I couldn't put just you know, a feeling on it or an interpretation. It was different. This person was hurt, and I stopped, and I had to re-examine everything that I had been told and blah blah blah, just because one person stood there and asked me. And I think about how many answers I could have given and quick got the person off my back so I could get my work done.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know,
Including the pat answer from the religions that you then went to pastor in,
absolutely.
which
And
I
I
would
thought,
guess you didn't give.
no, I did. How can you, you know, how can you, when somebody you see hurt in their eyes? And that's just one experience. Like that one experience of seeing hurt in his eyes is seeing hurt in a community, in an experience of people collectively. You've got to stop and rethink what you thought about it and what does this mean for you going forward, you know? All right. And once I figured out, it was real quick too, that I didn't think what anybody else think, because I would not consciously think of something that would bring a person to tears and talk to another person that's really a stranger and doesn't look anything like you. Get it?
Yep.
I'm thinking, I couldn't even think, why me? Like this was supposed to happen, and I'm the one who's supposed to get this straight in my mind for some reason. And I did that, you know, and that's what I think these big moments of difference are saying to us. You know, I'm not saying God is saying it or Spirit is moving. I'm saying when we encounter these strong moments of change, it's not for nothing. You know, I'm here like 60 years, 40 years after that original experience. I could be gone. I'm still here. That happened for something. And
You have
along the
no
way,
idea what his trajectory has been since then. That was a
I don't.
deflection point in his life. I mean, to get to the point where he's talking to a stranger at the copying machine with tears in his eyes, looking for absolution and getting confirmation that he's a valuable, worthwhile, important human being, regardless of the stories that other people have convinced him he has to tell about himself. That's magical.
It is, and I'm not taking any credit for, you know, anything deep. He said, "You changed my life," and we went on to work together for years after that. So I know he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
But I'll never. To me, I don't see it as like, oh, I changed him. I came to a point where I had to face what I thought that would have an effect on other people that I encounter forever.
Yep.
You know, forever.
Yep.
And that's where we all face with big changes, you know, big stuff that's outside of ourselves. if I didn't meet him, so what? Like I'm cool the way I am. I wouldn't have ever been challenged by it. But, the pandemic is the same thing. We have been challenged to change the way we've been doing things and thinking about things.
Yeah.
And that's, it's not a pandemic discussion. I'm sorry. It's just, I use that as a reference point.
It's a collective experience of change, of transformation. That was a disruption that everybody had at the same time, for the same reason. And at the risk of actually doubling back and end the episode where we began, which we so rarely do, talking about evolution and your bishop friend who wants to quadruple the size of the auditorium. If the ministry is about being that healing presence, of bringing an awareness of love and light and compassion to one person who's in tears to the copy machine, how does the 10,000 seat auditorium support that? Or is there an assumption in there that things have to be the way that they've been? What is our purpose? What is our goal? What is it that we want to have happen? If I share my gifts and skills and talents in a way that brings as much good into my life and to my family and to my community and my world as is possible, what's that look like? What does that look like? For some people, what it looks like is get out of the way. There are other people with wonderful ideas that are ready to jump in and do the work and make the change. And the only thing that's keeping them from being able to do that is somebody standing in the way saying, this is the way we've always done it. I'm in charge and you got to do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had bosses who said my way or the highway. I was like, bye.
And you could, there was that freedom inside of you that allowed you to do that. Everybody doesn't have that.
Oh, sometimes it was traumatic. It's not a built-in that was easy to do.
Well, look, we get faced with questions and opportunities to make changes, and I use the word freedom a lot. Do you feel free to do that, unafraid of what might happen? I'm very sensitive to where the bishop is going and what the bishop wants to do. I know that vision from many years ago when it was shared with me. But I have a sensitivity, I think, about where we are now collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if there's a different way that you can meet those goals. And, it's going to mean changing a lot within, which is a whole nother subject. But that's, that's where it starts, right?
Oh, yeah. And that's actually where this whole thing is heading, because the conversation with the bishop is, are you willing to let go of this preconceived notion and make room for something different? So let's take another break, and then we're going to do a prayer for everybody who is listening to this. And the prayer is about letting go.
Get inspiration in an instant. God calls are the gentle and uplifting moment of truth to help you remember that the bright light of God's love is shining right now as you.
It's your God Call with Reverend Bill.
Start your 2-week free trial today, and you'll get a phone call 4 times a week from Reverend Bill with an uplifting half-minute message filled with insight, wisdom, story, and fun.
Let your light shine.
You can answer the call to listen to it live or let it go to voicemail so you can hear it later. After the free trial, your subscription is just $5.95 a month. The details are at godcall.org. God calls are disruptive, intentionally.
Whenever you write something, put on a gold star.
They take you away from your routine to remind you about the truth of who you really are. They come at random times between 8:15 a.m. and 6 p.m., so you won't be expecting them. And somehow, the message is exactly what you need to hear at the time.
Magic is loose in the world.
It's a moment of motivation in the middle of your day. Find out more and start your 2-week free trial now at godcall.org.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
We have been having a wonderful conversation about personal evolution and moving from the experience that we used to be having to the next experience that we're going to be having. And some of us are very graceful about that. And some of us clench onto old experiences with our iron grip refusing to let go because either what's been going on before has been working really well, or because it's been going how it's been going, but we're terrified of having it be different because then there's a whole area that we don't know about.
Hmm.
So the prayer today is about the willingness to let go, to be a participant in transformation. And there's a wonderful visual of the trapeze artists swinging back and forth high above the floor of the circus. They're swinging back and forth, and there's the trapeze artist, and there's the catcher, and they're swinging and they're swinging. And as long as they continue swinging, it's just a couple of people swinging back and forth. The thing that makes it spectacular is when the trapeze artists let go. They let go and they do the somersault and the
Yes.
twirl and the tumble, and then something's going to happen. There is something going to happen next. But until they let go of the bar, nothing happens. That is such a wonderful reminder of how our lives and our experiences are evolving. Something is going to happen. Something is going to be different. And there's guidance that's available to us that lets us know that this is the right time. This is the moment to make a move. It is okay. It is safe. It is at least reasonable for me to take this move. But when it comes along, everything that's come up until that moment, everything that we've assumed so far comes into question. And it is the opportunity for us to let go. And doing that from our small self, from the part of us that's just observing the world around us, it can be terrifying. It can be terrifying. In the Olympics, there are people who do spectacular dives off of a 10-meter platform. That's 33 feet in the air, 39 feet in the air. Just jumping off of one of those things is terrifying. And here they are doing acrobatics. And in order to get into that ability, the fear needs to be released, to let go of that, to make room for the artistry, the performance, the success, the joy, the competitiveness, and the gold medal.
Hmm.
There is a need to let go of, I've never done this before. There is that requirement that we release whatever has led up until this particular time so that we can allow something new to come in. And we have a partner in that. There is an infinite creative power. There is one source which shares itself as all of its creation. It's God or nature or spirit, Big Sweetie, the Big Bang, whatever it is we want to call it. There is that one source from which everything has been evolving since the very beginning of time. That evolution includes everything, everyone, everywhere, every planet, every particle, every person, everything is that one taking its own particular form. And this next experience of evolution for each of us is the way that divine presence shares itself even more richly and deeply and fully and joyously as us. Not for us. It's not a gift being handed to us. We get to do the letting go. We get to release our attachment to things being the way that they have been. We get to open to that newness. We need to release the safety of holding on to the trapeze bar and allow ourselves to be cast into new possibilities. So it is with faith and intention and knowing that we allow ourselves to let go, to invite in something new, to set the intention for not the result that we want to have, but the experience and the tone and the texture and the flavor. A gold medal, maybe. Being safely caught, maybe. Applause, maybe. A safe landing in the net below, maybe. Being able to go back home afterwards and tell a story, maybe. The experience that we are seeking is different for each of us. Success is different for each of us. And as we let go of the specifics of what that success looks like and allow ourselves to open to the flavor and the tone, the feeling, the nuance of what that experience brings to us, as we invite and embody that new feeling, that infinite creative power that creates everything is partnering with us to create this newness. The guidance, the timing, the ability is all the divine presence sharing itself in a new way. And each of us is participating in that creation. And so the good is unfolding. It's different for everyone within the sound of my voice. It's different for all of us, but the same process for everyone. This is how that infinite creative power is already responding, sharing itself as good and more good and more good for and through and as each of us. I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good. I'm grateful for the awareness of the process. I'm grateful for the willingness of each one here to let go and open to something new and wonderful. And so with gratitude for all of this good and looking forward to the delightful stories that we all get to tell, I speak this word and I release it into that same creative law, setting an intention for this newness now. And I know it's already unfolding. And so I let it be. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
That is the conclusion of the Practical Prayer podcast recording for today. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
I like that one.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Evolution. Thank you, everybody who's listening on and playing along on New Thought Media Network. To remind you again, if you have a question or a comment, you can put it in the comments or even a prayer request, and we'll take it from there. And if you are watching the recording, I want to do this asynchronously, as they say, like not while we're live. You can go to BeTheLight.com, be-the-light.com, and go to the Practical Prayer section, and there's a comment button, and you can fill out a comment there and participate along that way. And I will get back into my office. The bat will be dismissed in time for next week's program. Oh, it's always something. So, yeah, progress is happening. Goodness is going on. It sounds like Steve has finished lawn work over there.
He's never finished until 5.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well,
I don't care what it is. He's never finished.
My neighbor's lawn is cut, and my the street in front is paved. So they seem to be finished with that bit of business for today.
Good.
So all the creative goodness of the universe unfolding.
I hope your bat is gone and that, everybody can comfortably rest in the house.
Yeah, bat in its perfect place, having its perfect experience that has virtually nothing to do with me.
What did Oliver say? Because Oliver would tell you whether that bat's still in there.
No, he hasn't. I haven't invited him in.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the animal control guy in town came in and he couldn't find it. He says, maybe it flew out. It's like, oh, you're really helpful.
Ask Oliver.
Went from being the expert to being a government employee, just doing his thing. So it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. We'll see what happens. I get to go up and shuffle things around, and we'll see.
Okay.
Love unfolding. Thank you, and thank you, everybody who's listening, and see you next week.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.